Nature is often seen as a sanctuary, a place to escape the noise of the world. But for 4 teenagers in the summer of 1960, the serene shores of Lake Bodom became a slaughterhouse. It was supposed to be a weekend of freedom, camping, swimming, and the long, pale nights of the Finnish summer. Instead, it became the most infamous unsolved mystery in Nordic history. While they slept inside their tent, someone or something was watching from the trees. A shadow that didn't unzip the tent to enter, but attacked through the fabric, turning their place of safety into a trap. 3 died. 1 survived. And the truth remained buried in the dark waters of the lake for over 4 decades before a shocking arrest turned the case upside down. Welcome to the Unknown Archive. Today we step into the silent woods of Finland to reconstruct the night of the Lake Bodom murders, June 4, 1960. 2 18-year-old boys, Nils Gustafsson and Seppo Boisman, along with their 15-year-old girlfriends, Tuulikki Maki and Emeli Björklund, arrived at Lake Bodom for a camping trip. They picked a picturesque spot on a small peninsula. They set up their single tent, spent the evening laughing and talking, and eventually crawled inside to sleep. Between 4 a.m. and 6 a.m., as the sun began to rise over the calm water, a brutal, frenzied attack began. The killer didn't enter the tent. He attacked from the outside using a knife and a heavy, blunt object, likely a rock, to strike the teenagers through the canvas. The tent collapsed under the weight of the assault, tangling the victims in fabric as they were stabbed and beaten. It was a chaotic, claustrophobic nightmare. Around 11 a.m. the next morning, a carpenter wandering near the lake noticed the collapsed tent and the bodies lying on top of it. He fled in terror to call the police. When the authorities arrived, the scene was gruesome. Tuulikki and Seppo were dead inside the ruins of the tent. 15-year-old Emeli Björklund was found lying on top of the tent. She had suffered the most brutal attack, having been stabbed multiple times even after she was dead. And then there was Nils Gustafsson. He was lying there, barely conscious, his face a mask of blood. He had a fractured jaw, broken facial bones, and deep stabs, but he was alive. In the Unknown Archive, we look for what the killer took. Curiously, he didn't take money or valuables. He took the teenager's shoes and Seppo's motorcycle keys. The shoes were later found nearly half a mile away, neatly hidden in a hollow under some bushes. Why would a killer carry blood-soaked shoes away from the scene? The police investigation was a disaster from the start. They allowed dozens of curious onlookers to walk through the crime scene, destroying footprints and evidence. Despite the chaos, a few clues emerged. 2 young birdwatchers who were near the lake that morning claimed they saw a blond man walking away from the collapsed tent around 6 a.m. Nils, recovering in the hospital, claimed he had no memory of the attack itself. He described the killer as a being with glowing red eyes, a description likely born of trauma and shock. Later, under hypnosis, Nils gave a more human description, a man with a pale face and blonde hair. But the sketch produced looked like 1,000 different men in Finland. The first major suspect was Carl Valdemar Gillström, known locally as the Kioskmen. He ran a small shop nearby and was notorious for hating campers. He had been known to cut tent ropes and throw rocks at hikers. On his deathbed in 1969, he reportedly confessed to a friend, saying, "I did it." But the police dismissed his confession. His wife gave him an alibi, claiming he was in bed with her all night, though she later admitted she only said that because she was terrified of him. The second suspect was Hans Assmann, a rumored KGB agent who lived near the lake. The day after the murders, Assmann arrived at a nearby hospital with his fingernails black with dirt and his clothes covered in red stains. He acted strangely, pretending to be unconscious when the police arrived. Assmann fit the description of the blond man perfectly. However, the police never seriously interrogated him, claiming he had a solid alibi that was never fully explained to the public. For 44 years, the Lake Bodom case sat cold. It became a part of Finnish folklore, a cautionary tale told to children about the dangers of the woods. Then came 2004. With the advent of modern DNA testing, the Finnish National Bureau of Investigation reopened the file. They tested the blood patterns on the shoes found half a mile away. The results sent shockwaves through the country. The blood on the shoes belonged to the 3 victims, but there was no blood from Nils Gustafsson on them. The prosecution's theory was reborn. Nils wasn't a victim who got lucky. He was the killer. In June 2004, Nils Gustafsson, now an old man and a retired bus driver, was arrested and charged with the triple murder of his friends. The theory was that a drunken argument had broken out. Nils, allegedly fueled by jealousy over Ermeli, had snapped. According to the prosecution, Nils killed his friends, inflicted some minor wounds on himself to play the victim, hid the shoes, and then lay down on the tent to wait for discovery. The trial was a media sensation. The sole survivor was now the chief villain. But the case for the prosecution began to crumble. Medical experts testified that Nils's injuries, especially his fractured jaw, were too severe to be self-inflicted. He would have been in too much pain and shock to hide the shoes and stage a complex crime scene. Furthermore, DNA testing found that while the victim's blood was on the outside of the shoes, someone else's DNA was inside. It didn't match Nils. In 2005, Nils Gustafsson was acquitted of all charges. The government was ordered to pay him a massive settlement for his suffering. The case went cold again. But the acquittal didn't solve the mystery. It only made it more haunting. If Nils didn't do it, then the blond man seen by the birdwatchers was real. A ghost who walked out of the trees, destroyed 3 lives, and vanished into the morning mist. In the unknown archive, we analyzed the overkill on Ermeli Björklund. She was stabbed 15 times. This suggests a personal motive, a crime of passion. Does this point back to Nils? Or was there another admirer, a hidden watcher who felt rejected by the 15-year-old girl? We must also look at the hidden shoes. Why hide them? In many psychological profiles, this behavior suggests the killer wanted to cripple the victims so they couldn't run away. But they were already dead. This points to a killer who was disorganized, or perhaps someone who was playing a game. Lake Bodom today is a quiet, beautiful place. Families picnic where the tent once stood. But the locals still feel the weight of the summer of 1960. The mystery has inspired movies, books, and even a world-famous heavy metal band, Children of Bodom. The image of the Reaper associated with the band reflects the fear that something ancient and malevolent lives in those woods. Was Hans Assmann the killer? Years later, on his deathbed, he also reportedly confessed to the murders, claiming his connections kept him out of prison. If Assmann was a spy, his protection by the authorities would make sense. A triple murder would be a minor inconvenience for a Cold War asset, but we are left with no physical proof. The DNA inside the shoes remains unidentified, a genetic ghost. The Lake Bodom murders represent the loss of innocence for a nation. Before 1960, Finland felt safe. After 1960, the woods became a place of shadows. The 4th victim, Nils, lived his entire life under a cloud of suspicion. Even after being cleared by a court, many still whisper his name in the bars of Espoo. Imagine waking up in a collapsed tent, unable to see, hearing the screams of your friends, and feeling a heavy object shatter your jaw. Imagine the silence that followed, the sound of the lake lapping at the shore, while the killer neatly tied the laces of your shoes and walked away. Some believe the killer is still alive, an old man living a quiet life in a Finnish village, carrying the memory of that bloody morning to his grave. Others think the Kioskmen was the one, and his suicide was the final act of a guilty conscience. In the unknown archive, we keep the file open for the DNA. Science caught up once, it might catch up again. One day a name might pop up in a database, a grandson, a nephew, a distant relative. And the ghost of Lake Bodom will finally have a face. Until then, the case remains the ultimate Finnish enigma. A story of 4 teenagers who went to the water to celebrate life and found a darkness that had no name. The tent itself was preserved for decades, a tattered, blood-stained piece of fabric that held the DNA of a killer. Looking at the photos of the crime scene, you see the brutality. It wasn't a clean kill. It was a struggle against a force that was relentless. The blond man remains the primary suspect of the subconscious, a figure that represents the stranger in the woods, Why did the birdwatchers only see him from a distance? Why didn't they hear the screams? Sound travels differently over water. Perhaps the wind carried the cries away, or perhaps the attack was so fast the victims never had the chance to shout. The Lake Bodom murders teach us that sometimes there is no closure. Sometimes the shadow wins. As we close this entry in the unknown archive, we look at the calm surface of the lake. It looks peaceful, it looks inviting, but it hides a history of blood that will never be washed away. If you ever go camping in the north, listen to the trees. Notice the silence, and if you see a man with blonde hair walking alone in the mist of 6 a.m., don't wait to see his face. 3 lives lost, 1 life shattered, a mystery that spans generations. The killer's shoes were found, but his footprints lead into the void. The shadow of Bodom is still there, waiting for the next summer. Thank you for joining us at the Unknown Archive. Who do you think was the blonde man? Nils, the Kioskmen, or the spy? Let us know in the comments and stay curious.